Good evening. I'd like to call to order. This is the regular town council meeting for Tuesday, August 15th, 2023. Please rise for a moment of silence. We'll have the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Fishbein,
Here.
Carmody,
Here.
Laffin,
Here.
Barone,
Here.
Tata,
Here.
Testa,
Here.
Zandri,
Here.
Cervoni.
Here, Councilor Allenson will be arriving as soon as she can. Before I entertain a motion on the consent agenda, I want to note that from item 3V, the $25,000 grant to Supercuts, account number AB050, has been removed. Now I will entertain a motion on the consent agenda.
I move we approve or accept consent agenda items A through U and W through Y and Z as amended.
Can I get a second on that motion?
Second.
I heard Zandri and Fishbein. Madam Clerk, take your pick. Okay.
Overruled.
Well, actually, she picked who the tiebreaker was. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. That portion of the consent agenda passes.
I move we approve consent agenda item V as amended.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilor Zandri. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. The consent agenda passes. Oh, I'm sorry, Councilor Tata.
That's okay. I'm just
Forgive me.
abstaining from that one. Thank you.
My apologies.
It's okay.
Noting Councilor Tata's abstention. Thank you. Item 4, there are no items removed from the consent agenda. Item 5, public question and answer. Oh, I'm sorry. Before we move on, we have an appointment. Ms. McKean, you were reappointed to Inland Wetlands and Watercourses. James Corello, are you here? If you would both like to be sworn, I think those were the only appointments we had. Get close to the clerk. Oh, did you not bring the oath? Okay. When you get a moment, visit the clerk and she will swear you in. My apologies. I should have warned you. Okay. If you want to stick around, she'll get the oath while we're in executive session. It'll be early in the meeting. Thank you for coming. Now, back on to public question and answer. Mr. Knickerbocker.
I just wanted to say thank you on behalf of WCI for approving the parade grounds. And I hope that everybody comes out on October 7th and 8th. Thank you.
For Celebrate Wallingford.
Yes, for Celebrate Wallingford. Yes, exactly. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Gross.
Bob Gross, Long Hill Road. Just a clarification, when you, on 3V, when you said as amended, that just means it was, that one item was withdrawn from the, it wasn't put back on with a different amount or anything?
It was, yeah, you are correct. The amendment was to remove the Supercuts application.
Then I have a question for the town, or to the mayor, I guess, or the controller. There was a agenda item tonight, or a consent agenda item approving some money for Public Works. The question is, the recycling person, wasn't that a budgeted item in your budget before this?
He's talking about the appropriation of the bottle bill money.
That is currently handled by the grants administrator position. It's being shifted to Public Works as a part-time position.
Right, but what I'm saying is it's already in your budget, though? The person who's there now is already in the budget.
Yes, it's funded this year.
So you're going to refund it again?
We're providing additional new funding for a part-time position in Public Works. The money for the position that will be filled in the program planning office remains the same, but it will not include the recycling.
So this person's just going to do recycling?
I don't understand your question.
Well, you just said this person's not going to do recycling. But, so the person in program planning, if you hire somebody, will that, and that's not till January the person leaves, right? Or,
That will be as soon as feasible. The recycling subject matter will be handled by Public Works.
it's just, this money could be used to clean up some parks. It's already in this person's budget is already in, the money's already in the budget. This person could handle it. Whoever you hire could still be doing that job because they do it now anyway. It just sounds like you're not going to replace that other person. So it's unfortunate that this is money that could be used to clean up a park or to clean up bottles alongside the road. That's what its main specific purpose was to clean up the towns from all these bottles and debris. No? No? Yes?
No, the money is authorized to be used for recycling activities, which would obviously be a person who would be reporting to the state as well as creating, encouraging programs within the town for recycling. That can be expanded upon some by a new position in Public Works. The position that has been handling that has not had the time to devote a lot of activity to it, and thus we're actually providing more funds than previously for recycling.
Question. Does their Community Foundation of Greater New Haven has a program going now funded through the state of Connecticut, through Connecticut Department of Economic and Development, and they awarded tens of millions of dollars to the grant to the foundation, New Haven, and it's for minority-owned businesses and women-owned businesses. I think it's minority women and women-owned businesses. I think it's gender-specific. EDC, are they going to these? Because there were many applications for ARPA. Some didn't qualify because their timelines or whatever. So is EDC making a concerted effort to go to these people to try and, because I don't know that's happening. I just wonder if it is. Because there's millions of dollars out there for local businesses. Does EDC do that?
Are you asking, did the...
Does EDC go to the local businesses, tell them that these grants are available and help them to procure grants that are available for these businesses that are minority-owned and women-owned in the town of Wallingford?
I don't think they, I'm not sure, but I don't think that they have an ongoing program to do that. If a business came to them and sought help, I think they would be in touch with our grants administrator and look to help wherever they could. But EDC really does not deal with grants in that way.
Well, the only reason I asked, they did with ARPA.
Well, the EDC was removed from the position of dealing with the ARPA funds once the committee was established.
No, they went to businesses. They specifically went to businesses and told them the ARPA was being offered. They specifically offered to help them do applications. They specifically moved them forward to receive ARPA funds.
Well, then if you know
Well, that's
they
what I'm
did
saying,
that,
but this
then
would be
that
continuation.
would include any minority or other business that would be
I understand, but what I'm saying is if they did it for that, why aren't they continuing on and helping the small businesses, especially women and minority-owned businesses in the community where there are dollars available for these businesses? If they did it for ARPA, why don't they do it for this too?
Well, that would be a good suggestion for them.
There you are. I mean, I don't have any say with EDC. You would.
Well,
So
you
hopefully-
certainly could advance that at one of their meetings.
You know, yeah, okay. All right, thank you. Hopefully somebody will take that under advisement and do something. Thank you.
Anyone else? Mr. Reynolds?
Jesse Reynolds, Old Durham Road. I was wondering if we'd heard anything from the state regarding the failure to pass the ordinance regarding the Fair Rent Commission?
Not to my knowledge. I don't know if the law department has heard.
Are you intending to bring that back to the ordinance committee to talk about it again?
Absolutely.
Is there any reason why nobody's just put it back on the agenda to vote now that you're at full capacity? Because it seemed like you didn't have enough passing votes, but you also had some absences that night. Does procedure prevent you from asking to put it back on and re-vote on it?
We could have done that. However, we had a counselor who wanted to attempt some further edits to the ordinance, and we thought we'd allow for that opportunity to happen.
Okay.
But as far as I'm aware, nobody is banging down our door to punish us,
Okay. Thank you.
certainly. All right, there being no hands, I close the public question and answer period. Can I get a motion to go into executive session on item 6 and on the addendum?
Mr. Chairman, I move we go into executive session pursuant to Connecticut General Statute 1-206B regarding the pending litigation with respect to the workers' compensation claim settlement of Colleen Vandal, paraeducator, Board of Education, and pursuant to Section 1-206D of the Connecticut General Statutes with respect to the purchase, sale, and/or leasing of property.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, I declare the council in executive session, and I would ask that you kindly vacate the chambers for now. Thank you. All right, I'd like to call the meeting back to order. Can I get a motion to come out of executive session?
So moved.
Moved, seconded by Counselor Zandri. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, I declare the council back in public session. Can I get a motion on item 7, please?
I move we authorize settlement in the pending workers' compensation claim of Colleen Vandal, paraeducator for the Board of Education, as discussed in executive session.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes. Item 8 is our pension.
I move we approve a pension increase for retirees in the amount of 3% effective with September 15th, 2023 payroll.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Good evening, Mr. Hutt.
Good evening, Councilors. Jim Hutt, Town HR Director. Once every 3 years, in accordance with the pension contracts, the Department of Human Resources comes before the council to discuss an increase in pensions for pensioners. There's certain criteria that individuals need to meet to be eligible for the increase. One is they need to be retired for at least 1 year by September 15th, 2023. They must not be subject to an automatic cost of living increase that is police and fire and some of the electrical workers. And they should not be receiving any hypertension or workers' compensation payments at the time of the increase if it is approved. The last time I was here was in 2020. 1% increase was approved to pensioners. In 2021 and 2022, we've had record inflation over 40 years. And that inflation rate is coming down. It's approximately around 3%, a little bit above that right now. And I was going to recommend to the council to consider an increase of 3% for retirees, which would be effective on the September 15th, 2023 pension payroll. And the pension cost would come out of the pension fund. There's no budgeted line item for it. It would come out of the pension fund. So with that, if there's any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
Counselor Fishbein.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, Jim.
Good evening.
You said that you're going to recommend, but you did recommend the 3%, right? Is that fair to say based upon
Yes.
the backup? Okay.
Yes.
So why 3?
So in my 20 years here, when I started in 2003, I forget the first year, but they used to be 3%. And then in 2008, after the economic downturn, went back to 1, and then I think 1.5. So 3's always been the threshold. And though I don't like to tie anything to Social Security for 2024, the latest news I read was a 3% increase for Social Security recipients. And the cost of inflation is starting to, come down now to a little bit above 3%.
So 2020 was the last time that there was an increase, and that was a 1%.
That's correct.
And then 2021, there was no increase.
No,
2022, there was no increase.
no, it's once every 3 years.
Yep, we sit here in 2023. In 2021, was there an increase in Social Security?
I don't know.
In 2022, was there an increase in Social Security?
I think there was.
Okay, and then we have a 3% this year
Correct.
for Social Security. So I'm trying to figure out how you got to 3. If Social Security, we know based upon what you just said to us, effective this year is a 6% increase, at least back to 2021, how these individuals, how you got to 3. Was there, I'm just, were you looking at what we have in the pension fund,
So-
or it was a dark, and I'm not,
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out
no.
how we got
So-
there, because I don't know that 3 really does it, considering that they've had to suffer, 8% inflation over over the last year and a half, going through the pandemic, and the Social Security recipients are getting double, at least, this increase.
That number 3% is just based on what I told you. I mean, it's always been the threshold since I've been here, no more than 3%. And considering that the high rate of inflation in 21 and 22 is starting to come down to 3%, going forward, that's my recommendation, 3%.
Mr. Chairman.
Mayor.
Just, you shared, cost was reviewed, and the 3% is a $400,000 to $500,000 increase in pension costs.
But I didn't hear that. Mayor, what did you say?
Jim, why don't you talk
Yeah,
about the cost?
so the 3% increase, and this is just for individuals who aren't subject to the automatic COLA, and that's police and fire and some of the electric, so those aren't included. The cost at a 3% increase would be $421,250 approximately.
Yeah, we have that in your backup.
Yeah.
Yeah, so each percentage is approximately $110,000.
Yes,
So if we were to make this 4, it would be about 530,000 as opposed to 421. And if we were to make it 4, do you have money for that in the pension fund? I would expect.
so yes, there is money in the pension fund to cost that at 4%.
Okay. The way I'm looking at it, and we're playing with this 3%. The 3% brings the pensioners to 0 based upon the present, but doesn't in any way deal with what has been suffered through the pandemic. Individuals on a fixed income who had to do whatever to survive. Now we're saying, okay, inflation is downtrending. It may get to 3. And what is it today? What's inflation today? It's like 5.5, isn't it?
No,
Right?
I think it was like, the last one I looked at was like 3.2%.
Okay, well, that's good news. The last time I saw it was higher than that. Do I have the ability to make a motion to make this 4%, or do we have the problem with because your memo to the mayor recommended 3%. I don't see any backup as far as any requirement that the mayor had to sign off on that appropriation, right? That's what our packet reflects.
I'm not sure what you're asking.
Well, I'm asking, if I make a motion to make this 4, is somebody going to throw the flag and say, no, you can't do that because the council doesn't have the power to do that because you don't have the recommendation of the
No,
administration?
my review of the pension contracts is that this is subject to your approval. I'm recommending 3.
Okay. Well, I'm going to make a motion to make it 4. We'll see where it goes, okay? So moved. And
So there's a motion for 3%. I think your motion is to amend that.
yes, sir.
Okay. And is there a second on the motion to amend? There is no second. Councilor Zandri.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So just to give a little bit of an outline to some of the numbers that you get, in my budget spreadsheet, which everybody gets, I already have all the COLA numbers in there for Social Security to kind of round out some of the conversation that we've already had. Inflation did move 5.9% across the 2022 year, and then 2021 year. 2022, it was 8.7%. And while the conversation was ongoing, I did take a look up to what you were referencing. Inflation has been running at 5.9% 3.5%, but it's been drifting downwards. And right now, the Social Security COLA, the group that meets for Social Security is estimating, as you kind of identified, 3.1 right now for the potential increase. Now, that could change if the inflation starts ticking back up for the remainder of the year. It may go back up higher, but it's probably right in line with the numbers that you gave. So I'm in support of the 3%. It does not cushion the blow that the prior year had, nor the year prior to that, from the perspective of our pension formulas. But I think that when we look at the aspect of the fact that this is going to have a cost on the budget of the pension, not the town budget, but the budget that the pension has to deal with, at $421,000, I think it's a modest compromise, and it's a starting point. It's something that we could look at in future years to say, what more can we do? We currently fund the budget, I want to say at 71%. Is that what we maintain for the payments going in for the budget? The actuaries, they tell us to fund it at what, 71%, 72%?
Well,
The town-
the actuaries call for, I think it's over 24% of salary, right?
The town is currently paying 24.8% of payroll.
Of payroll, but there's another number that we hear every time during the budgets about whether we are funding it 100% or if we're funding it, it's like 71 or 72%.
Well, it would be, the employees are, what's the 15%?
So I think what you're asking is, what is the funded ratio?
Yes.
So for this fiscal year, it actually declined from 76% to 73.3%.
So, but that's within like the rule set, right? In other words, we get guidance to pay it that way.
That's correct.
Right.
You get actuaries.
The actuary statement. That's what I was trying to remember what the name of that was. So we're funding it based on what we're being told we should fund it at. But that's also in consideration of what the payout schedule is too, correct?
So they look at all those factors. They look at past service cost and the normal cost going forward.
But this is a change to that cost. It's going to add to that cost.
That's correct.
And that means in the future, the actuaries may say, we need to change it in this manner.
That's correct.
So these are multiple things that we need to consider. I think it's safe to move the 3%. It provides relief. We need to understand there's going to be a change in the total cost and what the actuaries say we should be expending into this program. So I think it's good to approve it and again, to kind of look at what these additional costs may be as we move forward. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Anyone else on the council? Councilor Fishbein?
Just to be clear, Jim, we can't next year increase this again, correct?
It's once every 3 years.
Yes.
Yes.
Can't do it next year, can't do it the year after. This is our only shot,
2026.
right
will be-
after a pandemic, so
Right.
I understand.
2026 is when I'll be back, if I'm here.
Got it. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Questions, comments from the public? There being none, Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Carmody?
Yes.
Fishbein?
Yes.
Laffin?
Yes.
Marone?
Yes.
Tata?
Yes.
Testa?
Yes.
Zandri?
Yes.
Cervoni?
Yes, the motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Did the Board of Ed remove the bid waiver?
Yes.
Yes, so no item 9. Item 10, report out from Maintenance Committee. And I see a lot of you here. Mr. Corello, welcome aboard. I understand you were sworn during our recess.
Look at you.
Good evening.
Good evening. If you could please introduce yourselves for the record.
Sure. Jason Michael, 81 Meadow Street. I'm the chairman of the Building Maintenance Committee.
James Corello, 20 Edgewood Drive.
Jeff Tilbrook, 9 Pogmore Drive.
Okay, so this being our first report to you, and at just turning 50, my first PowerPoint presentation, please have patience and pity if I go awry.
We apparently have a technological issue that is outside of your control. The remote to turn on the monitor that we were going to look at is not working. So if you are...
Well, I can start with at least the opening comments. The PowerPoint presentation that you hopefully will see, you've received. It has select pictures. I believe the entirety of our photos and documents were sent after that. There were hundreds, so we put in the ones we thought were most appropriate. We also, as a committee, consistently remind ourselves to stick to our charge. And it's a difficult thing to do as inspecting some of the properties and seeing some of the things we see. It becomes a bit emotional. So we're really just here to report. We've tried very hard not to assign blame, give our opinions on what should be fixed, how it should be fixed. It's really boiled down to, there's a broken window at property A. This is a photo of it. So I'd like to compliment the group with sticking with that, as it can be difficult at times. At any time during this, if you have a question, feel free to stop and we can go over it. But it's a pretty simple, straightforward set of pictures per property, and I'll try to be as succinct as possible. We'll start at Wallace Park. We found the park to be in fairly good shape. We noticed that there was a tree audit done and some trimming for some dead branches. We did find these in the bottom right picture that are hanging close, if not over, the tot swings, and we thought it should be addressed. We also found there's a fence that separates the west side of the park from the remainder of the large portion of the park, and it went in 5 or 6 years ago, I think, at this point, identifying that end of the park as Legacy Gardens. That fence has taken some shots, whether it's from lawn equipment or just vandalized. We found a few parts that were broken. There is another set of pictures of a broken tot swing. I did notice that Parks and Rec was there removing it. I don't know if it's been replaced, but you'll find we saw these items throughout this PowerPoint. We documented them. We don't know if things have been taken care of since. We have not doubled back, in other words. So you may find that some of the items here have been taken care of, as we have noticed maintenance taking place around town in the past few months. So a few more pictures of the fence. The fence I described is a newer fence made out of, I think, aluminum and plastic. The lower pictures are the original wrought iron at the point of the park that should outlast all of us in this room with, again, a bit of maintenance that it's in need of. The larger picture takes a bit more explaining. It shows the ADA ramps to enter the new fall zone protection areas as they're raised off the ground. It's not, I can't speak as fact, but I've had conversations with John LaRue. He's the owner of the company that just installed the new apparatus at Doolittle. He's done a bunch of work in town over the years. And I had described our enclosures as they were going into him. And these ADA ramps, for whatever reason, we noticed are leading to the interior portion of the park, which probably doubles or triples the effort it would take to wheel oneself to it. Why they're not on the backside or closer to where a sidewalk would be, we're not sure. But if if they can be addressed and moved there, I'm sure people would appreciate that. And that leads me to the point that I was making before, that I'm not sure, and it's more a question for the ADA compliant officer in town, that once these substrates are put in, these fall zone protection areas, it triggers an ADA rule that requires a hard surface of a determined width, 4 or 5 feet, to get from where someone with a mobility issue would park their car and get to this set of swings or slide. And we need to provide that. As there is a bit of a hill all along the eastern street that borders Wallace Park, but you would have to park there if you were a father with a child with a handicap or a child that has a mobility issue. You would have to traverse this entire lawn. It's not 4 or 5 feet. You're talking hundreds of feet to get across just to get to the play apparatus. So we thought that should at least be addressed with the ADA compliance officer to see what needs to be done. It is repeated throughout multiple parks in town, which we haven't not prepared to give you the review of, but you'll see it come up again. We move on to Grand Street Park that recently received a new playscape, probably 3 or 4 years ago, I'm not sure at this point. It's still in fairly good shape. There's a quick picture there of a fastener that's, the protection's broken away from it. It is riddled with graffiti that wasn't appropriate to put in the PowerPoint. It is in the backup pictures, you can see it. That probably should be taken care of. The basketball hoop speaks for itself. The bottom picture is there, the bottom right picture, as there was a phase 2 originally planned for this park, which is why there's this open swath of land that struggles to grow anything because it's not irrigated, which is understandable. But I'm not sure where that sits. There was a plan there for a shade structure and a walkway to the playscape that's there now.
So when you say phase 2, you mean another project?
So it was originally planned to have it as one, and cost factors came into play. So I was actually on the Park and Rec Commission at the time, so we ended up putting in the playscape, the fall zone protection, and a short walkway to get to it from the basketball courts.
To a real estate lawyer, a phase 2 means something very different. So I was glad you weren't talking about that.
Appreciate that. There's a couple quick pictures of the basketball court, which has its problems. The top right picture is some sort of 3-dimensional tar or something at the base of the slide on the playscape. We'll move on to Doolittle Park, which gets a bit more expansive just due to its size and need. We start at the front of the park. That is the dedicated flagpole. Most of these pictures will speak for themselves. I don't think I need to beat it into the ground. The bottom right picture is of the Doolittle Park sign, or one of them, that states rules and regulations, clearly having some gravitational issues. We move on to the red building that we found to be, as far as the brick and mortar, in decent shape all around. Clearly it needs some carpentry work, and the windows need to be addressed, but as a structure in general, it remains a viable building from what we can tell from the outside. If my memory serves, there's actually 2 bathrooms in there, plumbed, that go without use. I'm not sure why, as there are no portable bathrooms on that side of the park. I believe there's a couple by the playscape. Yeah, the roof's been covered with the rip-rap rocks from vandals, just heaving them up there. That picture didn't make the slides. These pictures are from the lower portion of Doolittle, so the far eastern portion, which has a small basketball court that's in rough shape. I know from memory that $160,000 or $180,000 was appropriated, I think from ARPA funds, to redo the surface of that basketball court and the upper basketball court for another $180,000, I think, or somewhere around there, with post-tension concrete. So we just included the pictures in case that doesn't come to fruition, or if the plan changes where that money can be used in a different way other than a duplicate, a duplicate amenity in the same park. The four pictures there, the top left is the parking area itself on Wall Street for the lower portion of Doolittle. The pictures of the bridge show a footbridge over to Simpson Avenue, I believe, or at least the road that, I don't think it's Wall, I think it does go to Simpson, but.
I think it's Henry
or
Street.
It crosses to right, the base of Henry Street, thank you. The other picture is from the center of that bridge, pointing north up Wharton Brook. And it's in here to show the overgrowth on the banks of Wharton Brook. For years, as long as I could remember, up until the past 5 or 7, the brook was completely exposed other than a couple of trees on it, which made for a beautiful view and access. And more importantly, the reason it's in here is now it is so overgrown, you can't see if someone happens to fall down the 3-foot bank into it. So if you're there picnicking in what's now just a field down there, if a young child scoots between the weeds, they're gone, and there's no seeing them. And it's just from a lack of what the town always did, which was trim it to the bank of Wharton Brook. It just, year by year, it got further and further away, and now it seems that there's just a mower that gets as close as it can, and these trees and sumac and weeds and prickers just keep growing and growing and growing. So that's something that might want to be addressed on a safety issue more than aesthetics, because that varies from person to person. I'll start with the top right picture. That is actually a picture of the bank itself that is no longer visible. The larger picture here, we've moved over to, actually I'll take care of the bottom right picture. That is a hole left in the ground from someone removing one of the old wooden bollards that line that street that leads down to the red building. They used to probably prevent parking, I imagine, at one time or another, but there are 3 or 4 of them that have been kicked over, removed, thrown somewhere else. But the foot-deep divot is probably 8 or 10 feet across in diameter and remains. The bigger picture is just a photo, probably a tree audit should be done around the playscape, the large playscape at Doolittle, as those are dead limbs hanging over the sitting area where the picnic tables are provided for the playscape. There are the picnic tables there. Have seen better days. As we move on to the playscape itself, we had walked from apparatus to apparatus, and although we didn't include every single picture of every single exposed bolt, these two sit in the middle of a seesaw that is built to have children in the middle of it on that platform. It's missing the protective caps you see on the other fasteners. It's been that way for quite some time, and clearly a safety issue. The top right picture is just showing where there is a lack of the fall zone protection that's there. Now, that's not indicative of the entire playscape, but it shows that that is hard pan. Whether that's been addressed or not, again, we haven't doubled back. Since the last week when the new piece went in, perhaps this was added to. The bottom picture is the shade structure that was installed probably 5 or 6 years ago, I'd have to say at this point, just before I think COVID hit. The shade structure, which if anyone's familiar with the old community pool ones, they're the fabric ones that stretch over. They get removed in the off-season, stored by Public Works, and then reinstalled. Well, at the end of the last off-season of this particular shade structure's life, it was vandalized and cut down the middle. So it was removed, and that's probably going on 3 years ago and is yet to be replaced. I had heard word that there were supply chain issues during COVID and have not revisited that with Parks and Rec, but it is a shade structure in the midst of a heated summer that is not really doing its job. These are a few more shots of the playscape itself. How it's just showing its age. I don't know exactly how old it is, but it's certainly, I know that I would imagine that the fact that we could get an entire piece of that playscape that matches the exact one we had, that parts are probably available for the rest of it. And there certainly does seem to be a need to start replacing those, or at least form a plan to do so. The top two pictures were quite concerning to us, as that is a saddle swing at the playscape. What's being pulled back is the rubber protector over the piece of metal that runs through the core of it. That has been there and like that for quite some time, and either should be removed or at least removed, if not replaced. The bottom two pictures are of the benches that overlook the tennis court. They are in need of a substrate underneath them. They measure close to 2 feet off the ground and aren't getting any better. These pictures were thrown in the back. The big picture is actually of what used to be a footbridge to Bacchus Court years ago. And that is the dam, I guess you could call it a dam, the spillway that used to hold the brook back to flood that area behind the red building where we used to ice skate as citizens. It's still there. I don't know if there's any hope to resuscitate that amenity, but it is about a 4-foot fall off the edge of that. And whether or not that needs to be fenced off or not is up to the powers that be. The bleachers are the ones that are adjacent to the softball field on the eastern portion of the park. The photo was taken for obvious reasons, but more importantly, underneath it's gained inches of silt and moss on the cement pad, which will likely shorten the life of it. We move forward to the pavilion that abuts the parking area at the front of the park. From what I can tell, it was coated with solid stain probably when it was erected, and doesn't seem to have ever gotten any attention since. Living here in New England, you're lucky to get 5, 6, 7 years out of an exterior coating before you compromise the substrate underneath. This one is in dire need of attention, or it will end up needing lumber replaced and probably be a much bigger price tag. This is a staircase that's on the street that leads down to the red building. I imagine in its day it had its purpose. It does not seem to serve one now, certainly not in any safe manner, as the stairs themselves are crumbling and there is no railing attached to it. It leads to a continued small hill behind the hardball field and big backstop. So again, just the recommendation would be to either remove it, most likely remove it. I don't see a rebuild there. The tennis, these are a couple shots of the tennis courts. We had noticed a couple years ago that the tennis courts were bubbling. These are the new post-tension concrete courts. The company was called to come back and repaint them, which they did. However, the reason they bubbled was because of depressions in the concrete that remain, which of course will bubble again. The shot next to that is just, it's about a 5-inch drop off from the court to the doorway, leaving it on the eastern side that likely needs fill. The other picture, and this may jump a bit outside of our guardrails, I frequent the farmer's market on a regular basis. It's awesome. It brings a huge crowd. There is very little parking by 10:30. It starts at 10 o'clock. So people park up as high as Fair Street. They park wherever they can. However, there's no access to get to the park other than through the parking lot. And you watch people pushing strollers through there, and it becomes a bit of a track as people want close parking. So they do lap after lap after lap, waiting for someone to leave. The picture that was taken with the do not enter sign seems to be a pretty ideal spot for a walkway, whether it's gravel or process or cement, ideally. But it would provide a safe path from the front of the park to where baseball games are played, or practices are held, or the farmer's market is on a weekly basis. Next up is the Center Street Cemetery. We did our walk through there. There wasn't a whole lot to report. A bit of rotten wood on the older building. There's clearly moss growing in the pointing of the cement block chimney. That gate that's bent is on the Center Street entrance. We did report multiple trees in need of work, which I did notice a couple of weeks ago. A company came in about a day and a half and took care of about 6 of them that had some pretty hairy branches that were hanging over Center Street, so that's very good. We were denied access to the interior of both the new Center Street facility and the old one, so we were unable to report on the condition of the interiors of either. A couple more pictures of some stockpiling of debris. I understand that this has also been addressed and removed since. This brings us to the train station. The train station was an eye-opening experience for all of us who went down there. The people inside were wonderful and accommodating. The first and second floor had their issues, but nothing that would be out of the norm of a building of that age and one that's had its attention so many years ago. The basement, however, was, well, it was shocking to say the least. The large picture here shows the area where, my apologies, the area where there was a baseboard, and we're not sure what the growth is there, so the picture was taken. Various debris piles and garbage, and everywhere you looked is crumbling foundation and brownstone. The picture on the bottom right, and there's a better one, I think, on the next slide. Oh, maybe it's one after that. We'll go back. The picture on the bottom right is actually in a town employee's office in the basement of the train station. They deal with debris from the crumbling brownstone on their filing cabinets on a daily basis. We found uncovered outlets, we found flammable materials not in proper cases, and again, just random piles of debris and what looks to be garbage. The large picture here, and forgive my smirk, we really can't figure out how this came about. This is a door halfway down a stairwell. I'm not sure who has to go in and out of it, but it leads to the furnace room on that side of the building. We did happen to contort ourselves in there, and on the previous slide where you saw the pile of debris, that's where we found that. But it has been a bit of a smirk-generating photo since we took it. The other shots here on the top were from the first and second floor. It's basic, sheetrock failures and a bit of cracked glass over a bathroom. We continued through the basement for quite some time, as there was enough to look at for a long time. We did notice air purifiers, store-bought ones, on the floors in the basement. We did notice the air quality was not of the highest nature as far as just from a layman's experience. This picture in the middle is what I've been told since, and was quite interesting, was a tunnel under the tracks that would deliver luggage to the other side, to carriages or cars, I imagine. It was walled off. The room that's remaining is what you've seen in some of the more graphic pictures of failures. There's no door there that's closed anyway. It's open. We found active leaks and water coming into the room. The bulk of the basement in the center is occupied by a model train club. We noticed the space to be extremely cluttered with all sorts of stuff. Most concerning were the flammable materials that are used in their adhesives and primers that probably should be stowed properly. The shot on the left here is some of the failing ceilings in the basement that is near that wonky door in the staircase coming off of that. This was the better shot I was looking for. This is the same picture. These are the walls in the employees' offices in the basement. Again, another separate debris pile that we found down there. I mean, frankly, it's a mess and really should have eyes on it other than ours. These are some of the shots of the first floor showing what's called efflorescence. It's the minerals used in making the bricks leaching out, and typically it's due to them being wet over and over and evaporating water. Thank you. So it's not the bricks, it's the mortar. James contributing already. So we found that throughout the southern portion of the first floor to be where people do work. This picture on the bottom right, it shows buckling carpet. The carpet is a problem. The bigger one is we're not sure, as I don't have the specs for what a railing height should be, but we found it to be quite low. And that is a full story drop off on the other side of it. So we thought that was worth showing. We move out to the outside, showing a missing slate tile. There are multiple throughout the building on top. We didn't see the need to take pictures and post them on this PowerPoint for repetitive reasons. We found the outside of the brick to be in fairly poor condition as well, mostly along the bottom. There was a repair done some years ago where for years I thought they had put the wrong color bricks in. They look pink compared to the historical red ones. And upon further deterioration of that repair, we found that it was a mixed mortar placed over the failing brick as a skim coat, which makes the color look different to begin with. And then on that skim coat, it was hand drawn pointing to make it look like bricks. That is now falling off in big sheets and revealing the original problem that wasn't fixed properly. The quick picture of the bricks of the sidewalk all the way around. I know it's been under construction lately with the crosswalks being worked on, but there are numerous sections of it that are being undermined by water, creating very uneven surfaces. The top right picture, I believe, actually, I don't know if that's the flagpole or not. But as we walked around the building, you can see on the sides, as the bricks are starting to deteriorate, they are all in dire need of a mason and full repair. We found that the abandoned gutter system, I don't know when the roof was redone, if it needs it or not. I would imagine some of the issues with the brick falling apart at the base is due to water splashing up and salt being applied in the winter, and the combination of both. These abandoned lines used to be the leader drains that went underground. There's one in this corner too. They are still remaining there and not properly sealed off. This one is with a cone, but I don't think that's the way to do it. Sorry, I jumped ahead real quick. We found missing light fixtures. This up here on the top right corner should match the one there. It's just no longer present. We'll move on to the outside of the town hall structure, this being our last property. Most of the pictures you see here are of the rear of the building. This is the window on the second or third floor that is clearly in need of attention structurally. You can see the failures in the mortar and brick above it. The lintels are rusted to the point where replacement may be necessary. The other pictures here are of the stucco coating that went on what looks to be the addition for the elevator and lower lobby. There's clearly water getting in there and coming back out at will. The foundation was found to be in need of attention for prep and recoating. Here you can see the stucco portion again. That is the window on the left that we saw on the previous slide. A couple of the other pictures show some of the entrances where the building's old and the masonry is showing its age and just needs to be addressed. The foundation, again, in need. We recommended that we found some of the shrubbery to be up against the building, which is never a good idea with masonry, as it traps moisture and aids the deterioration. These are some of the shots of the parking lot in the back. This is the upper right picture with this blue car is the furthest west parking areas. It's just overgrown to the point where the barriers for the cars are buried. The lights that illuminate the parking lot have now been taken over by sumac and other trees that I'm assuming were not planted. Quick picture of the front where the railing has continued to stain the granite steps. Is obviously in need of attention. Now to the interior of Town Hall, and I'll take a second. I believe there were 150 or 160 pictures taken. Again, we didn't see it necessary to show 45 ceiling tiles with the same looking stains. So as you see them, you can imagine there are a multitude of water issues and leaks. We were not allowed access to the roof, which we can only determine by the amount of water damage in the building and the multiple areas of which it presents itself, that there is likely roof issues in the building. I think everyone's familiar with some of these pictures as they're taken from the stairwells that we use on a regular basis. We're not really sure what is going on in this picture, as it's a return or a feed for the HVAC system installed in a way that's puzzled all of us since we discovered it. I believe it's in a lower bathroom here. Some of these pictures are from the lower bathrooms on the basement level. They are self-explanatory. Put in a photo of the carpet as throughout the building in multiple offices. It's again showing its age and buckling, creating a safety issue along the way. We took some photos of the bathrooms. We noticed that on the second floor here, the bathroom sinks have been replaced. However, during the replacements, the lags used to rehang or to replumb pushed through the walls on the other sides of these bathrooms, and it was never addressed or finished or buttoned up. And that's recent work, I believe. This was a missing tile in a stairwell. We're not sure what the substance is above it. It looks to be some sort of result of constant water, or at least extended water damage, as it seems to be mold. I'm not a mold expert, but it certainly looks like it. Again, this photo here, these are the lags used to hang our new plumbing and sinks in these bathrooms, and this is what's left behind. These are inoperable storage closets. Again, continued evidence of water issues throughout the building. Some of these photos depict just a lack of janitorial attention. These are in window wells, in stairwells. They tend to duplicate themselves in numerous places throughout the building. The next set of photos are right in this room on the second story, up in the seats above us, and some of the ceiling above us now. Clearly an ongoing, again, water issue, likely from roof leaks. And at the end of our presentation here, I'm sorry, there was a memo sent out, and this is to conclude, just to give you an idea. There was a memo sent out when the committee got on its feet to department heads as setting the guardrails for our committee. We found out through the grapevine that we were not to be allowed into areas that the public couldn't traverse. So with that, I just want to let everyone here know that there may be issues that we don't have the ability to see or report. So if these issues do show themselves in mechanical rooms or even, I mean, most of the employees of the town all of them were fantastic. Some were more than welcoming to bring us back behind the desks and show us what's been bothering them. Others came out and said, we're not going to let you back here, which is fine. They have a boss to listen to. But just so everyone here knows, it wasn't due to a lack of our job being done. It was not being permitted into these areas, which to me, and it will be the only personal comment I make, is akin to the health inspector inspecting the dining room of a restaurant, but not the kitchen. The bulk of an issue in a building will be in its mechanics. And perhaps other than James, maybe we're not qualified to be in there, but someone should pick up that mantle and be able to go look at that stuff. And with that, I'd like to thank the council for having us. I'd like to thank the committee I work with. They're professional, and they've put the time in to bring you what we have so far. We have other properties we have looked at. We're gathering our information on that. We have other properties we're scheduled to go look at. I think addressing you as a council, I know we're only here as long as you are. Assuming some, most, or all of you will be back, and this could also go out to the possible councilors who may be elected. This committee is important, even in the fact of its presence has caused spasms of maintenance in this town since it's been brought to life. I believe whether we continue with the next council or if the next council sees fit to appoint a different one, it holds value just being here. And with that, thank you. That's up to the chairman.
Well, he's a member of the
He
committee,
is.
isn't he?
Gabe Ramos, a member of the committee.
You just reaffirm.
Gabriel Ramos, 1080 Old Rock Hill Road. I am a member of the maintenance committee. And just to add a couple of the points that really meant a lot to me. And I feel like I know what I'm talking about when I say these things because I dealt with them, with OSHA, DEP, EPA, all those places. At the Learning Center or the railroad station, I believe that there should be an air study done in that building, especially downstairs. I fully believe that. I don't think I would work in there if I was hired. I would refuse to work in there. Another thing that's important, that was one of probably the pictures that were omitted because we had too many, fire extinguishers being blocked. That's a big no-no. If the fire inspector goes down there and sees that, I'm sure he's going to mention it. Overhead lighting without these shields. Fluorescent lights could fall down. That's another thing. I mean, this is one of the buildings that I thought was one of the worst. The slate roof, I've seen it, where some of those tiles slid off. If it ever hit anybody in the head, it would kill them. So this is just how critical some of the things are. We're not picky-uni on all the trivial stuff. We are here with serious recommendations. Thank you.
All right. Comments from the council? Councilor Fishbein?
Well, thank you for the presentation, and thank you to all the committee members. Thank you to Mr. Corella for stepping up and wanting to be a part of this. I know that you bring an aspect that I think will be very helpful here. Jason, I want to thank you for your PowerPoint presentation. Just a little tip. It's helpful if you number the slides, have a page number, because I'm going to go back through some of these, and for everybody to follow along, if I can tell you, well, it's page whatever, it would just be helpful.
Thank you. And if you knew the man hours it took just to do that, I'll get better though, I think.
No, but it's excellent, and I very much appreciate the neutral tone. Because I think we all want to end up in the same place. But I'm looking. I just want to start with the Grand Street Park photos, and you pointed out, and you said the basketball hoop speaks for itself. And when did you take these pictures of Grand Street? About?
No more than, that was the walk we did. It had to be probably a month ago,
Okay.
I would say.
So mid-July.
July 22nd.
Okay. Mid-July. There is no hoop on the basketball. Which,
That's right. It's missing the hoop in totality. The other one, which we didn't put the picture in just to keep it as short as we could, is tweaked and bent the other way. It's in need of attention.
you know, I've been jumping up and down about the basketball hoops at Highland School with the Board of Ed. Totally ignored. Within the last 2 weeks, a couple residents up there finally got fed up, and they went and cleaned it up. I only had 3 or 4 of these. I just wanted to. The Doolittle Park, the sunshade that you said was vandalized. When about did that vandalism and removal happen? I think you said about 3 years ago, right?
I want to say it stayed up. It had multiple burn marks in it at first, and then it had a full 4 or 5 foot, you could tell someone pulled out a pocket knife and cut it. And it was up for the remainder of that year. So if I had to guess, I would say probably the fall of 2019 as COVID hit, and I don't think it's been installed since. So that would be my guess. But I'm sure Director Michaels would probably have a better idea of that.
Well, I guess my concern is, perfect world, tonight we'd have Mr. Michaels here, we'd have Mr. Baltramitis here, we'd have a discussion, a timeline, a punch list, but that's not what we're doing. So we're doing piecemeal, and I appreciate that I'm not the one setting the menu here, but I will point out that months ago, I asked Mr. Michaels for a wish list. If he had the magic wand, what would he appropriate money for? And this was not on the list. So I find, I don't know. I don't know that that's the appropriate way to go about this, but the Center Street Cemetery, now you said that you were denied access in toto. Can you just explain, what did you do? Did you just show up there? Did you reach out first?
So once I had gotten word that there would be restrictions as to the areas we could go, I had a meeting with Rob Baltramitis, both myself and the vice chair, Bob Prentice, and sat down to try to get, so we weren't flying blind, because there was a department head meeting about it, there was a memo sent out about it, but neither were sent to our committee, and there was no invite. We were never given our marching orders. So we were kind of fumbling our way through. And so Rob was nice enough to sit down as we were figuring out how we would go about notifying, adult education that we were coming. Instead of just knocking on their door and saying, hey, we're here to look at your space, we tried to stay as streamlined as possible, to not disrupt town employees during the workday, but to be able to give them a heads up that, listen, we'll be coming. So we sat down with Rob and figured out, okay, June 9th, 11 o'clock, we're going to be there. So they knew, we all went. And in that meeting, basically we were given the directive of so let's take the town clerk, for instance. You can walk into the town clerk's office where you would go to ask for documentation for something. If you're not allowed behind the counter in a regular workday without asking anybody, you're not allowed around the counter unless they invite you there. So getting back to the cemetery, when we went to do our inspection, we started it. We did the outside of both buildings, and I requested to the Center Street Cemetery Association members. I said, "Can we go inside to do our interior inspection?" And the answer was no. I didn't press the issue, And I didn't with any department head or town employee who didn't give us access. As a matter of fact, there were people who looked visibly shaken saying no. And I said, it's okay. Like, we know where we have to stop if we have to stop. Sometimes some of the offices in this building, we had a 8x8 square to stand in and look around and then head out. So when it was asked if we can go see the inside of those buildings, the answer was just no. And we left it at that and continued our exterior inspection.
Yeah, so I'm just trying to look at the progression with regard to that outreach. So did representatives of the Center Street Cemetery know that the building committee was going to be at the property on a particular day?
Yes.
And did they have some sort of knowledge as to what the building committee was going to desire to look at?
Exact.
Okay. And you appeared on that day, you did the interior, and then when you went to effectuate interior access that they previously knew about, then you were denied access,
Yes.
even though members of the public are allowed to go in that building.
Yes, and after the meeting, after our walkthrough, I did contact the legal office here and asked for a copy of the lease, just for personal information. I wasn't going to dig in, because it just, as a property owner in town who rents to people, even though they rent your property, I still have the right to come look at it with proper notification. And I have not heard back about whether the lease with any SCOW, any third party that's renting a property or a building in Wallingford, I don't know the legal ramifications of saying, hey, this is Wallingford property, we're here to inspect it. Your lease, does it say you can deny access to the town representative? I don't know. I never got further than asking legal if that was possible.
And I don't want to, that's between the committee and the legal department. And certainly if you want assistance in that area, we as the appointing authority can, do what we need to do. But, I will, I was up here when we approved the lease. There is a provision in there that says the lease is not supposed to be used as a clubhouse. Which brings me to, one of the photographs, somebody, it looks like, painted a shamrock on the chimney. That's not graffiti, right? It's somebody.
Oh, it looked to be a stenciled shamrock.
Yeah, okay. Because I don't recall that being approved by this body at any point. So. And then the train station interior, I don't know what happens in that building as far as, you said, employees go in and out. What town offices work out of the train station?
I believe it's adult ed.
Okay, other than that.
I think it's just them and I believe the model train club leases the big center room in the basement. I believe, I don't know.
So I'm looking at this door with the stairs.
Yeah.
Which, it's what?
It's meme worthy.
Okay. And I'm to understand that this is the access way to the furnace room.
Yes, when you get through, we weren't able to find another entry point to that furnace room. Once we got through that door and you go around a corner and there's 2 or 3, heating units, or cooling units. I didn't inspect them that far. And then we couldn't get past them. So unless there's another door in there from the other side only, then that's the access point.
And do you know, is it oil heat?
I would have to guess natural gas. I didn't see any oil tanks or smell diesel, but I couldn't tell you for sure.
Okay. I don't see how that could ever be in compliance with OSHA. Ever.
I don't think you're going out on a big limb there.
No. I don't know that the fire marshal would have ever approved anything like that. I guess it is. it is what it is at this point. So, but thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Counselor Tata?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening. Thank you for the presentation. Some of these were great to see, and some were a little upsetting, but
I guess your mic's not picking you up.
am I still not? Am I good now?
I think you're better.
Okay. A couple things I just wanted to bring up. Little part.
Sounds like it's not on from here.
Now is it?
Yeah.
Okay. They said they fixed it. Doolittle Park, the brand new tennis courts with the puddles. I believe I brought that up a few months ago, I think when Councilor Marone and I went and we looked at some of the parks. I had questioned that because those are brand new tennis courts. And now there's the pooling. Does anyone know, is there any, I mean, what's the warranty on those? Are they supposed to come in and fix that? Those were expensive, and I think it's been a problem since they've been done.
So from what I understand, that when you do post-tension concrete, it's a one and done situation. You pour the concrete, you have whatever pitch you have to have the water drain all the way to one side. And then there's some formula that the companies use that determine how quickly a puddle will dry once the rain stops and the sun comes out. And there's probably much more than I'll ever even care to know about it. But I know that the surface failed due to standing water. And the fact that it was scraped or removed or however they removed it and painted again, it's a matter of time. And I don't know, it's probably, again, a question for the Parks and Rec Director of how long the warranty is. I think, from what I understand, the work that was done since you went and looked at it last year was under warranty. So how long that remains is beyond me.
Okay, I can call him and ask. The dam in the back, and I know you had said we used to do ice skating there, and I've heard this in the past. Does anyone know when the last time we had that was?
No, I skated there as a kid. Sure, I was skating there in the 80s.
I assume
It was the full, they would flood the whole area behind the red building.
Yep.
It was lit at night, so you could skate at night, and it was only a couple feet deep because it just backed the brook up.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. If it's just a few feet deep? I mean, that seems like a really safe way to do that.
Typically, when you fell through, it was to your knees.
Yep.
And you got back out and
Yeah.
got home as quick as possible.
I mean, I know, nowadays with insurance and liability and all, you don't see it as much, but I think that'd be a great thing to bring back, especially if it's only a couple feet deep. I mean, what a nice thing to offer.
We had made a push on the Park and Rec Commission for about a year or two, and things kind of got balled up with wetlands and all that stuff, and we didn't go any further to see if it could be a viable amenity again, but it sure would be great.
Yeah, I love that. I hope maybe we can look into that. Moving on to the train station, one of the things that I thought of, the tunnel that's underneath it, you said that's walled off now. I saw the picture.
Yeah, so that's what I was told. I'm friends with Dave Stein from Silver Petroselli, who did the assessment on the building, and he's the one who told me that it was originally a tunnel. I don't know how it was filled in or if it was just walled off, but I thought it was pretty interesting.
Yeah, I'm interested in that only because if the tunnel is still intact and it's just walled off, I mean, obviously I'm sure it would need work, but I know one of the things that was a big concern for people when we were talking about using the train station for some other use was crossing over the railroad tracks. So I'm just wondering if there's an existing tunnel there, might we be able to do something with that? So
I imagine Amtrak would probably have something to say about it.
I'm sure, and it's probably not an easy solution, but it's just, I was kind of intrigued by hearing that. And then town hall, obviously there's a lot of issues, but one of the things I just wanted to bring up in this room specifically, I mean, we've seen, nobody can, from back there, you can't see really like the beauty of this room, but I think this is one of the most beautiful rooms in town. I mean, the coffered ceilings in here, which unfortunately on TV you can't see, and sitting, in the back you can't see, they're gorgeous. I mean, the detail in this room is beautiful. And I would love if we could use the second, the balcony again. I know they have plays in here every so often, and They don't allow seating up there. There's some caution tape, there's buckets I'm looking at and tarps, and I know there was an issue with leaking a while back, and it was repaired. Now it looks like there's some of the coffers are peeling again. But this room is gorgeous, and I hate to see, just because of, it's really neglect, these issues that don't need to turn into big issues become big issues. And I think that's what I see in most of these pictures. I don't think, it just seems like really just neglect, a lack of maintenance and upkeep, and then things get to a point where, there's really no going back. So, again, just thank you for your work. These pictures are great to see what's going on. I just appreciate the work of the committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Carmody.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening. I just want to commend the committee for your thorough presentation and all the work that you're doing. I think an extra set of eyes by professionals and those with experience in property management and maintenance is truly a benefit to the town. I realize some of your findings are regular maintenance issues that those extra set of eyes have helped find, and I hope will be addressed. What is concerning to me is that much of your findings are not just routine maintenance matters, but real structural deficiencies, particularly in the train station and here at Town Hall. Frankly, I think it's embarrassing to see the state of disrepair that these buildings are in. These are buildings that people work in and visit. I would imagine that some of these issues that we saw in these photos tonight present health and safety concerns, not just for our town employees, but for members of the public as well. It's just unacceptable. I would like to know what's going to be done, and if there is no plan as of yet, I would call on the mayor to create a plan of action and how to resolve these issues and a timeline for getting them done. Thank you again, Chairman Michael and all committee members, for your presentation and the work you're doing to make the needed improvements in our town. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Councilor Allenson.
So, the missing basketball hoop, did we ask why that's missing? Or because, we say that there seems to be a vandalism problem on the other side of the backboard. So, did we have any communication with Parks and Rec on that?
That's outside of our scope. Believe me, we want to ask why.
Okay.
And so we've refrained from any outreach as to, like I said in the beginning of this, as to whose fault, who's fixing it, and all of that stuff.
Sure. So also one more piece of feedback. When you take photos, maybe something like a banana for scale. I don't know if anyone else is in that group on Facebook, but it's very helpful to just know what we're looking at.
There actually is one of the crack in that
I saw feet.
basketball with a foot, so we did
No,
try.
I saw feet for
We're
scale, and
available.
that was helpful. Definitely. Like, it's hard because, you live in this like little, you're like, am I looking at a blueberry bush or am I looking at a real tree? So, okay. And then, so the one thing I would also give feedback on is that, understanding that this committee is kind of a product of some issues regarding the Parks and Rec Commission, right? And also just generally looking at the maintenance of the town. I don't want to start throwing people by name, especially Kenny, under the bus by asking whether he would appropriate money for items, because some of these items are not necessarily from a council perspective, right? Like, this isn't for feedback for you because you're obviously not asking him for a bid waiver, but like, Kenny would not come to us for a bid waiver on a lot of the items, like replacing backboards, or if it's Parks and Rec, whether it's Public Works, we don't know in a lot of instances who is actually responsible for creating those purchase orders, but they don't reach the level that they would ever reach the council. So it's wonderful to know, like completely agree that during the summertime, it is tantamount that we have park space for kids to go to, and for people to play. It's just a matter of, I wonder if the holes that are left behind on that backboard, for example, just as for an example, were they left behind because they're actually stripped and now nothing can be placed in them until we get a new backboard for the whole thing, you know? And that would be helpful to know. And of course, without that feedback, we're kind of in a vacuum here. The adult education group, I mean, they've been very responsive to me if I've ever asked them for anything. The same goes with the cemetery. I have had the opportunity to tour them literally 3 months ago. I understand that the debris pile that you sent to us is an eyesore, but it's something that is being mitigated. I'm not really, I don't really have the same experience of that group of individuals that you guys have seemed to have. So, I also understand too that we're representing that renters would have to let somebody into their premises. They do not, just so you know, they don't. Unfortunately, I have it on good authority from personal experience and professional experience that if you're selling a house and a renter doesn't want to let you on their property, they don't have to. So that's not a thing, sorry. Town hall, seating isn't allowed for a specific purpose in the top floor. It's been acknowledged many times that we do actually need a lot of work in this building. I am certainly one of the people who would acknowledge that everything that you've posed to us is an issue, but we do have money that is set aside, by my understanding, for the roof, and I believe before that roof can happen, there is some other work that needs to happen first, and so we are looking at that. So it's coming. Unfortunately, so many things move at the speed of bureaucracy, which to me, especially being like like somebody who's in a publicly traded company, is super slow. I don't love it, but this is, you know, it's kind of the hand we're dealt in public situations. The train station, it's abysmal. I think we've all acknowledged that it's in an abysmal state, and this is why we've applied for grants to try to get the work done, just to get it up to like a general standard of code, and totally acknowledge everything that you guys have found regarding that building. I think that the people who are in there working right now are kind of doing the best with the situation that they've been dealt, and I certainly don't want to disparage their areas by saying like I wouldn't go there, because they really have done some amazing things with the areas that they're occupying. So I agree with you that we have a lot of work to do, and I agree with you that so many of these places could use Doolittle Park being a major example. You know, some of it I had a hard time with, because I'm like, well, that playscape was just burned down, and like how much of it we're waiting on to like replace the playscape, but then I'm conflicted, right? Because we know that we have a lot of work to do there. We know also that we have repetitive vandalism that keeps happening. My argument would be probably a lot of the same kids are the ones ringing my doorbell at 3 a.m. Because I'm one of the last people who doesn't have a Ring doorbell, so whatever, we disconnected it, bye. But you're not waking me up anymore. But it's one of those things where it's, you know, how much of it can we possibly impact, and then how much of it are we waiting on until we have a better solution, but then how long do we wait? And so I totally understand, and when I look at structural things that you guys are sending us, I don't want our building to look like that either. I don't want things that the Elks have raised funds for to look like it's gone into complete disrepair, you know? And so it's one of those things where, like, I want to say thank you so much for your work. And I also want to say, you know, we're doing the best that we can, right? We kind of move at the speed with which we're allowed without disparaging anybody. And we don't want to make it seem like these are massive issues that we should close down all of these places right now. I do actually think, though, the tennis courts and the basketball courts with all of the cracked pavement, like, that's kind of a concern, you know, like a major concern to me of them being filled. But it's one of those things where we see these it's kind of a bunch of pictures in a microcosm. And while we want to deal with everything, as I'm sure that you guys do, you understand the speed with which most of these things can be dealt with. So hopefully out of this, we can generate a positive conversation with the departments that are in charge of dealing with these issues, or at least see where all of these items end up falling on their, like, tick marks of things that they're doing. Because I know from my ride along with Mr. Baltramitis that he gave me an extensive list of things that he was just working on in one park, you know, and it was amazing to me how much he knew and how much Kenny knew when I met with Kenny. And I would hate to see it sound like we don't have faith in them to have all of these things on their tick marks. So I appreciate you guys coming forward with all of these things, and I appreciate you taking your time out of your day, out of time away from your families, and then sitting here with us tonight to listen to all of our very long-winded feedback, which I had to watch myself, and I was very long-winded. And so I'm sorry, Jason, for all the times I told you you were long-winded. I have to say, I appreciate all of the work that you guys have done. So it's not to say that we're not going to do anything with it. It's just that if it doesn't move at the speed that you expect it to move, it most likely has to do more with the speed at which sometimes the town or contracts or supply chain moves. So thank you very much, though.
Thank you, and your comments are heard for sure, and it's the reason we keep hammering home to each other that we're here to observe and report it. And it does look like, obviously, it's hard not to look like we're here pointing out deficiency after deficiency after deficiency, but that's why we've really, really, really tried to keep it as clinical as possible, and we'll continue to. And I'm happy to report that we've tackled some of the uglier faces of the town in this one. We've already looked at other properties, including 5 or 6 of the firehouses that will get glowing reviews from us. So hopefully our reports in the future will have a bit more sprinkled into the positive.
Thank you very much. And I actually am happy, though, that you picked these larger tick mark items, right? Because we have a lot of people who are very concerned from the public, from internally. So I do appreciate these items. I say like it's a checklist, but like these buildings, parks, areas being reviewed. And hopefully we can have a great conversation about other areas of the town that we're doing well in, but also those items that there may be small items within all of those places that we're saying, hey, this is great, but let's just do this last thing because it's a little tick mark to make it excellent, you know? So, thank you very much.
Counselor Zandri.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming tonight. I'm going to be real brief. I want to start with my thanks to all of you for contributing your time and your effort on this. And I agree with you, Jason, wholeheartedly, that just the presence of the activity is starting to make, I don't want to, again, I'm trying to keep it neutral. I don't want to think anybody's suddenly jumping on stuff because, oh, they're looking around. But I think it's a catalyst to move things along. And if that's great, it makes it for a start point. That's fantastic. I actually had to look up the Doolittle Park skating thing because it bothered me because I thought it was earlier, way earlier than I remember it. It was 91 and 92. It was still here. I actually had to look that up because I couldn't remember it. But that's right around the time where they had the warmer winters and a lot of the ice problems. The ice was not solidifying. They were putting up the no skating signs on it. I think shortly afterwards, a couple of kids fell through. But like we mentioned, it's not like they're falling through to their knees, but they're getting wet and cold. And I think at that point was around where it ended. The old train station doesn't surprise me, the condition that you guys found it in. When I was 14 years old, we had a Saturday morning group that used to meet there. We would play fantasy role-playing, Dungeons and Dragons. We played in that building on Saturday mornings. And literally, the way that you guys took some of those pictures are the exact ways that I remember it. And the balconies with short railings, that pulled up rug, the stairwell, that stuff has been like that since 1983. So I know there's been changes in the building because Adult Ed's been in there and there's the Mile Railroad Club, but a lot of those pictures are exactly the way that I remember the interior of that building being from back in the 80s. So it's just one of those elements, like you point out. There are buildings that we probably never really look at, and we really should to be fixing them. And then others like the fire stations, which are probably right up to snuff. They're in there all the time, doing work, keeping things up to date. And it's just a different type of maintenance, and those folks are there. So again, I appreciate, this is not easy work. I understand that because you're presented with the challenge of going in for a town that you're committed to do stuff with and say, I'm going to find a bunch of problems on. That's not really what you're trying to do. You're trying to point out these are areas for improvement. And I appreciate the difficulty and the balance that you guys have to take on that effort and keep it as even keel as you've had. And so, again, I appreciate the work. I hope to see it continue through the other buildings that you're going to look at. And I look forward to additional output for that work that you guys are taking on. So thank you all very much.
Counselor Testa.
Thank you. Good evening, gentlemen. Thank you very much for all of your work so far. You're not finished. My question is, and I assume the answer is yes, will you have an itemized written list breakdown of all of your findings? This was my impression of what your task was, and the PowerPoint is amazing to see what you pointed out to us. My vision of this committee being a committee of the council was that you were to gather information and present it to the council so that the council would then be aware of things, hopefully in an itemized way, that we could then on an ongoing basis question the administration on at budget time, potentially talk to department heads in meetings. It always revolves around us following up on whether or not what the administration's plans are and what's included in a budget. I don't want to see the mood here be you're presenting a bunch of requests to us now, and we have to say to you, well, we'll see what we can do. That's not how it works, right? You're reporting to us. And, You don't report to the administration. You don't report to the department heads. And while a lot of times people will say, we knew about this, the administration is well aware of it, the department head is well aware of it, we may not be aware of it. And that was the whole point of having your committee. I would fully expect the Director of Public Works to be pretty darn well versed in what is needed in the parks and in the town buildings. He's very good at his job, and I'm sure he does know. I know Kenny Michaels knows what has to be done. I know there's a lot of people that know. They're not surprised if you say, hey, did you know that there was a ceiling tile falling down? I don't think anybody would say, I didn't even know about that. Well, we didn't know about it. We may not have known about all of this stuff. That was the whole point of having you. So I'm hoping that you're not finished, clearly, and I'm hoping that when there's a new council in January that perhaps the charge can be continued and the work can continue, because nothing's going to be done in 3 months. But I'm hoping that you can prepare and present to the council in more or less a report, spreadsheet, checklist, whatever you want to call it, a format, identifying specifically by location what needs to be addressed. That way we can potentially influence action. Otherwise, this will be a fool's errand on all of our behalf.
Yeah, absolutely. We have copious notes that can be put into. As a matter of fact, one of our members, Bruce Conroy, is ill and couldn't make it. So seeing how he's not here, he can do that.
Actually, that would be right in my wheelhouse. That's exactly what I do.
I mean, that's really what's needed. We're asking you to do a survey of all the town properties, identify areas in need of improvement, and giving us a report. And then, again, we can follow up with the administration at budget time to see that these things are being addressed, and if not, why. Again, otherwise it's just going to be us talking to each other, and that's not going to be productive. So thank you for what you've done so far.
To get to your point on the information.
Yeah.
We do go out to the site with an inspection sheet that we make. And on that sheet, it lists.
The microphone's not picking you up for the meeting record.
We have a sheet that we use to inspect every property. It's told, the name is written down, the address, the person who did review the property, and that list consists of everything, let's say mechanical, safety, whatever it may be, and there's categorized and a place to write what exactly you saw. And then there's a green, yellow, and red check mark on to kind of like list it, what kind of deficiency there is, if it's critical or not, whatever, marginal. So we do have those sheets. We can clean them up, that'll be more than what you need. It'll have all the information that these pictures showed you.
Well, I appreciate that. And that's how I envision this working in a way that it would be productive. So thank you for your work so far, and keep it up.
Councilor Lavin. Thank you, and thank you guys. I know it's a lot of time, and I know you still have a lot to do. I look forward to the culmination at the end and the reports that you were just talking about. I had a similar question about that. I'm glad that got answered. And I was wondering if after the meeting, Mr. Zandri could send me the source on the 90s ice skating, because I don't remember that at all. Yeah, not 1991 like Mr. Zandri is trying to claim, but we'll see.
I'll send you the article.
Thank you.
All right. Questions, comments from the public? Come back. Mr. O'Connell.
Riley O'Connell, 39 Edgerton Road. So I just want to hone in on a couple of things that were brought up in terms of the speed of addressing these issues. And I realize, and I think this committee is very well aware that their charge has been to bring these issues to your attention. I think they've done a phenomenal job with that. But I wouldn't be content, and nor do I think the council should be content with just accepting this idea that it's going to take forever and we'll never catch up with these maintenance repairs, because it's not like Wallingford had an earthquake that we all forgot about where all these issues happened overnight. I mean, that photo from the basketball court at Doolittle was like that when I was a kid. Now, granted, I was a kid much more recently than I think probably most of the people in this room, but this has been an issue for decades. So with that in mind, there was a time when all these things were maintained. What's standard for dilapidation in Wallingford is not standard for the rest of Connecticut. So I would implore, some level of intention, some level of urgency, especially for, some of the things we're talking about here. We heard about tiles that could slide off a roof that's often traversed underneath, that could potentially severely injure someone, if not worse. We're talking about dead branches, overhanging sitting areas. These are very serious issues, in addition to some of the more aesthetic ones. So I do encourage that we follow up on that. And I would also like to point out that I think as we've talked about already, this is a temporary committee as it currently is set up. And it only passed by a slim margin by this council. We don't know who will be on this council come January and how many folks will still be on there that are there now. So I also would encourage you to not wait. I don't see the reason to wait to extend this committee far into the future through ordinance committee, as opposed to waiting, because we don't know who will be up there. We don't know what the votes will be. And I hear all the time, we all hear it all the time, that when we bring issues in front of this council, the number one thing we hear back as members of the public is, well, we couldn't do anything if we weren't aware of the issue. And that's totally understandable. And now we have a committee whose sole job, as Mr. Testa and Councilor Testa very eloquently said, is to make you aware of these issues. And so the last thing we should do is just let it fall by the wayside in that regard. And lastly, when you do, hopefully in the next 3-4 months, extend this committee's longevity, I hope you also extend the strength of their charge. Because as we saw here, that they were, prohibited from, I like the reference that, or the analogy that was used about a health inspector not being able to access the kitchen of a restaurant. That's what a lot of this felt like. So while we clearly have already more than enough on our plate to deal with, we don't necessarily have the whole scope of what these issues are, which is exactly what this committee exists to bring to our attention. So I encourage you to advance that charge in a way that would allow them to do their jobs. So thank you.
Mr. Gross?
Bob Gross, Long Hill Road. I think the committee's done a fabulous job. I know they have areas they want to get into, and I'm sure they will in time. I don't see how there's surprise on the council. You guys use the bathrooms. You see what's going on up there. You walk the hallways in this building. Some of you have been to the train station. I was there a few years ago, and you could see what was going on down there. I had a friend that was in adult ed, and they had programs there. So, this is no surprise. When ARPA first came up, there was discussion of putting it towards some town projects. These are the kinds of things that the money should have been spent for. The surprise from some of this, yes, the door in the basement, which is just unbelievable, and it would make a good meme, that, yeah, people might not see. But walking in common areas and walking up the staircase, I know somebody who's made a joke that said every year we should circle the circle, because every year it keeps getting bigger. Like you measure somebody when they get taller every year, a kid. It's the same thing. That keeps getting bigger and bigger, and nothing gets touched. And I don't think the blame, there should be no blame game, especially against Public Works or any of those departments. They're not funded. They're down employees. They're not funded properly. And so I think a lot of it lies to the left over here with the administration. They don't want to spend the money. You had the ARPA money. You had CRRA money. None of them, and I'm not saying you shouldn't have spent some of this money on ARPA the way you did, but nothing's gone to repair the town. It looks, I don't know if you've gone to other communities, ball fields, schools, parks. Some of them are really fabulous. Ours are just horrible. That's blunt, and Nobody can really disagree with that. I don't name one outstanding park. And nothing with the Park and Rec Commission either. They tried for years. You read their minutes, you read what they tried to do. They tried to do these things, but they were stopped. And the town has money, and it's unfortunate that none of this has gotten done. But we will have a new administration next year. Hopefully that some of this will come to fruition, and what they're doing will bring it more into the forefront, and things can make a better appearance than they are now. Thank you.
Seeing no other hands, I bring it back to the counselor. Counselor Fishbein, I noted you wanted to speak earlier.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I just want to take a moment. This morning I was sitting in Atlanta Airport, and a bolt fell from the ceiling. I picked it up, brought it over to the guy. 20 minutes later, they had a crane put the bolt back in. Government building. If we were taking this seriously, at the next council meeting, we would have a report as to who was empowered to either cut a hole in the wall and put a door next to a stairway or install a stairway in front of a door. We don't have the power to go get that information. Someone in this town was allowed to purchase materials, to alter town property, and I very highly doubt that that activity was ever approved by anyone, nor possibly even done by somebody who had the acumen to do that. It is, as Councilor Carmody said, unacceptable. I don't know how I can sit up here and it's been there for a while. Councilor Testa mentioned a punch list. I very much appreciate that. However, I would suggest that the punch list by area has some sort of tiering, color coding, that kind of stuff, major priorities, minor priorities, right? That would make sense, because then we can take that document and we can go to Park and Rec, which, I hear time and time again about a cultural disconnect between Park and Rec and Public Works. And at some point, something's going to happen with regard to that. But somebody has to take the major things, which there are major things that need to be addressed, and direct somebody to do them. But that obviously hasn't happened. I would suggest, because we created you guys, you do have certain power. When you run into something like the absolutely ridiculous door next to the stairway, reach out to the fire marshal's office. They ever approved that? Look, I don't see anything stopping you, and then that can become part of your report, right? I don't know, sitting here right now, that, that has been approved. I know, I think residentially, you're supposed to have some sort of a special door, which is access to, if you have a furnace room. It can't be just a wooden flammable door. So I don't even know that the type of door is approved. That's something that I would appreciate, you taking that step forward. And just, because somebody could die. And I don't want to be up here.
So in our defense, not that one's needed, but a memo was sent immediately after the cemetery inspection and the train station inspection to the administration and the council. I showed up the next day at a council meeting, and during open question, got assurance that every councilor had received it. Now, if you want us to start going to department heads, fire department, electrical inspector, just let us know. As far as we knew, not that we knew, as far as we assumed, that was a bit out of our range. But if that's something you would like us to do, by all means, give the green light. We don't shy away.
No, I'm just saying that I believe you have the ability, as anybody in this town has the ability, through, like an FOI request, which you guys are like one step above, right? Because you do have some color of authority here. When you run into something in an inspection that is of concern, that Mr. Corello has acumen in this area, you know, he very well may say, hey, you know, that might be a fire issue, right? You know, that I would have no problem you taking the step forward and just saying, hey, you know, Mr. Fire Marshal, you know, have you inspected this property? You know, can I get a copy of the report, right? I think that would be helpful. I think it would be helpful to the residents of the town. So, but those are just my comments. So, but I thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for your report. Sounds like we'll see you again. Next up is discussion and possible action from Councilor Testa. Your item.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I will be quick. My intention is very simple. I would like to see the pool project rebid immediately so that the information's available when a new administration and council takes office in January. I think a lot of time can be saved. I will stress that this action was promised to us many months ago, and I see no reasonable objection to this, nor am I interested in entertaining any. Bidding is not a funding commitment. So, as a side note, I would also like to see the members of the previous committee asked to return and oversee the bidding and review process as they had done in the past. I can only hope that with the promise of possible action, they would be willing to resume their work. But that's just a side thought on my request tonight. So I will make a motion that the town council approve a resolution formally requesting, I have this written up for you, formally requesting that the administration immediately order and authorize the rebidding of the community pool renovation project, utilizing the previous bid specifications, with the provision that the project be bid with all components considered alternatives that can be removed and/or revised.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Councilor Tata.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So when I saw this on the agenda, I looked up, I found, well, with some help, I found some previous minutes of ours. And the most recent vote on this was very similar to the motion you just made, and I believe still stands. It was April 12th, 2022. The motion which passed by all those present, it was 8 ayes, 1 absent. That motion was to authorize rebidding of the community pool project based on the original proposal. Rebid includes base renovation of existing facility and friendly amendment that in addition to rebidding, we also bid or issue an RFP to seek cost of renovation as accepted. So that passed unanimously by all of those present, 8 of us. That, I think, still stands. I mean, that was our, as far as I could tell, that was our most recent vote, just over a year ago, but nothing happened with it.
I know.
Yeah. So I'm not sure, it's not that I'm against your motion, that's still on the table as far as I'm concerned. And I like that had that other element to it, just to find out once and for all, can what's there even be repaired, or is it a complete tear down? So again, I'm not against this, but I think we've already done this, and I don't know how doing it again is going to change anything. I think that's still on the table. I mean, I haven't changed my mind about it, so thank you.
I actually agree with you, and so I'm, with all due respect, Councilor Testa, I'm not sure what the point of it, of restating the same motion is, if the first one didn't produce a result. So,
Well, sometimes your kids don't go to bed, and you have to tell them twice.
okay, there's a response.
There are better analogies, but, we can only ask. So
Clearly.
I want a forceful resolution. Again, if you don't want to vote on it, that's fine. But at At the very least, then I would request I would request from the administration an update on where this stands, because we were promised that it would happen.
I see no other hands on the council. Questions, comments from the public? Mr. Gross.
Bob Gross, Long Hill Road. It's not Mr. Senna there tonight, but it's somebody else.
Mr. Naples.
Mr. Naples, how are you? I did not know who it was. The question would be on the pool, is there any money left in ARPA? Can you, any of it? Is there any money left in ARPA?
I don't think we have a final report as yet. And I don't think Brian is prepared to talk to it, but last I heard from Tim Senna, we still have some applications, and the final resolution or the final amount of money to be left is not calculated at this point.
So all that $13.1 million is gone. $5 million was hopefully appropriated for the pool and not one penny possibly left for the pool. It's just a shame. It's just a shame that it goes back to the last part about the way town hall looks and the town looks. It's just a shame that not one thing was spent on stuff to make it better for the citizens of town. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I didn't say there was no money left. There certainly is money left. And I think there is a very positive thing, and that is many nonprofits and small businesses receive the benefits of the federal government and its money through our process of making that available. So it's hardly a lack of response to the public.
Mr. Michael.
Jason Michael, 81 Meadow Street. I just wanted to remind everyone for public record that the town is about $477,000 deep into the pool project. Money spent. And just two more quick points. I don't understand. I didn't understand when I was on the commission, when I chaired the commission, why the park is closed. So we have an empty pool that's fenced off and secure, but the park remains closed. It's a 7-acre parcel with green space, parking, bathrooms, but it's closed. It gets mowed. It gets weed whacked, but it's locked. At the very least, people should be able to go in there and have a picnic. And lastly, in that original bid, which I'm sure is more money now, but itemized in that aquatics facility was about a 4,000 square foot splash pad. It's huge. It's probably twice the size it would need to be. It would be one of the bigger ones in counties around us. It was about $500,000, soup to nuts. Completely separate from the pool system, had its own filtration. That's quite a thing to have. And I'm not talking about $8 million or $9 million or whatever boogeyman price is being put on a full-on pool project. You have a splash pad in there for $750,000 that is open from April until September, October, being used hopefully for free by the residents of this town. It's just something to think about. And lastly, we do have a pool in Wallingford operating that the public used to swim in. It's fully functional, and it sits in Sheehan High School. And again, while I was on the commission, I pushed that once the community pool was deemed to be not worthy of repair, why we weren't allowing residents to swim there. The only organizations that use it are the Sheehan students and the YMCA. But you and I can't go swim there. I don't understand why. There was a 60, 70, I believe, maybe I'm wrong. I forget what the budget for the pool was, but I can guarantee it's not going to cost that to put a janitor and a lifeguard at Sheehan and at least have a pool, even if it's reserved for senior citizens and children under 14. I mean, whatever numbers you want to make. We have a pool full of water, operational. So it won't cost much to allow people to use it. Just food for thought.
Mr. Reynolds.
Jesse Reynolds, Old Durham Road. Can't we just knock it down? I mean, it's an eyesore. I don't think it can be repaired in its original state. And so as we decide what to do, can't we just knock down the pool and make it look like at least a grass-covered hill? Because when I talk to a lot of people in town, they complain about it. And it's a festering pool of water ready to be, your next mosquito-borne illness away from, in the neighborhood. Why can't we just knock it down? Like, I understand the need to rebuild the pool, and I understand that a splash pad was part of that plan, and we don't know what it's going to cost now because it's been years, but why can't we just knock the thing down? It's not going to get fixed. It's not going to get repaired. There is no, you can't fix the pool, the bathhouses. We heard it all before. It's basically a pile of trash right now. Why can't we just knock it down and just fill it in with something and call it a day? And then at some point in time, if we ever decide to do this again, well, there's the spot for it. Or just build a splash pad in its place and just call it a day. I mean, it really, I'll take my time. Last night I was at the soccer fields. This is unrelated, but slightly related. I'm at Woodhouse Field, right? Woodhouse Field is one of 2 fields in towns that we're allowed to use that have lights at night, right? We're not allowed to go into the high school fields. Don't know why. Never been allowed in there. There's turf in there, which if you're averse to rain is perfect, but we're not allowed to use it. So we rescheduled our game last night. Starts to get dark. It's a safety issue. The out-of-town team is from Milford. They drove a long way. We start the game at 6:30. Starting to get hard to see about 7:15, so I go to try to open up the light box. Now, forever, there's a metal box on the pole with a padlock that the soccer league has the combination for. You open up the padlock, you get a key, you go over, you open up the light box, turn on the lights. Counselor Laughlin's nodding. He's been there. Some of you have been there, I'm sure. You've seen the lights get turned on. Well, somebody put a padlock over the light box with a combination lock that nobody had the combination to. I called the president of the league. He didn't know about it. Called the coaches. They didn't know about it. We found out after the fact that Parks and Rec went and put a padlock over the light box because the light box handle was broken. Now, why am I bringing this up now? Because this is all the time, right? These issues do not ever stop. It's always a Band-Aid over a Band-Aid over a Band-Aid, and then eventually people get frustrated, and then they don't want to help out, and they don't want to volunteer, and then you don't have a soccer tournament in your town anymore. This is where this goes. You have an eyesore of a pool that's been sitting there since before the pandemic. Some of you, and I won't name who, told me it'd be cheaper to wait after COVID to fix it. Well, it never got fixed, and now it's a giant pile of garbage. It needs to be cleaned up, it needs to be raised, it needs to be moved, and then figure out what to do with it. Thanks for indulging me.
Mr. O'Connell.
Riley O'Connell, 39 Edgerton Road. I'll be brief because we've talked about the pool. I've talked about the pool a million times. It's very important to me. I will say I hope the council does at least vote on this tonight. I'm glad Councilor Testa brought this up because, sure, perhaps it is fruitless. You voted on it before to no avail, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't stop trying, right? Because as soon as there's a lot of things the council can't do. You guys vote for resolutions frequently, but they're still worth doing because as soon as we stop having the will to try, then I don't necessarily know what we're doing here. I think most of the benefits of the pool have already been described millions of times, but I will point out, just because we talked about the old ice rink today, I went to school in Maine. I loved having an outdoor ice rink in the winter and having that ability. One of the reasons they stopped doing that, and we can't do it today, is because all year round, we live in a warmer world today than we did 30 years ago. And we've seen that very evidently the past 10, 11, 12, 13 summers in a row being some of the hottest in recorded history. The need for that pool has perhaps never been greater, and now we're going on our 5th year without any water, any usage of that pool, which is truly unacceptable. And I think I was most concerned where it was only this summer where the first time, that it was mentioned, that pool and that surrounding area is a town park. And for the first time ever this summer, when you go to rent a park, if you're part of a nonprofit or part of a league, you go through the Park and Rec, you can select which park you're renting for your request. And this is the first summer where I saw the community pool park completely removed as an option, which tells me we're going in a direction where there's no, at least with current trajectory, there's no plans to bring that park, that splash pad, that pool into any kind of future. And that to me is very concerning. So I hope that the council does vote in this, stays resolute in this resolution and keeps the pressure on, because people of Wallingford need this. And I will say one last thing as well. This is the perfect time of year to put it back out to bid, because if you want to have an idea of how, I know I don't want to give you guys concerns that we're months away from the next budget season, but this is when you want to get those prices in now so you can have an understanding of where this fits into your fiscal planning for next year and for the coming years. So thank you.
Real quick, Bob Gross, Long Hill Road. As other towns have done, and the council can start now, there are grants available to do these types of things. Splash pads, help small businesses, whatever you want. There are grants for pretty much anything. But this town just doesn't seem to have the will to look for grants or a full-time grant writer. So the idea is maybe the council, Mr. Testa or somebody else, lead a panel just to organize to, you have representatives in Hartford, get on their case, you fill out these applications. Doesn't mean you're going to get it, but at least have the ability to do it. And it wouldn't be as unpalatable to some people if you got some money from the state or feds. Thank you.
Seeing other hands, I bring it back to the council. Councilor Fishbein.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I guess part of the problem with asking the state for money, I've filled out those bond requests. They want to know how much the project's going to cost. And I get, there was a intimation to ask the administration if this motion passed, what the reaction would be. And I didn't see the mayor go to the microphone. So I guess I'm going to ask directly, Mayor, what is your intent should this pass?
I believe the motion does not talk about what was bid. It talks about what was bid plus an additional add-on. That will require hiring someone to write the spec.
No, I didn't say an add-on.
I think the intent, Mayor, is to have the same exact resolution as was passed April 12th of 2022, which is to put out the old plans to rebid, as well as rehabbing the existing. That's the intent. I believe.
Right, and we do not have specs for rehabbing the existing.
Okay, so
You can't put that out to bid. It's a thought. It's not spec'd out. We'd have to hire someone to analyze what it is there, whether it can be reconstructed, what are other options with regard to what was decided on the design of the new pool.
So it's possible that we could bifurcate the question and put out the rebid of the prior plan, as well as, we've already appropriated $1 million. We got $1 million in the bank towards this project. There could be working together to say, okay, we're going to spec out the redoing the present, which might take more time. And in the meantime, we're doing both things. If this body somehow cobbles that together, is that something that you're going to partner with us?
Well, I'm certainly listening, but I'm not hearing something that is going to work well. If you're waiting for specs to be drawn up on something, what is the time factor on that? So picture this going out in the marketplace. So a business is going to spend money in order to put together a report, put together a bid. but there's no assurance that we're going to do anything. We're looking for them to tell us what it might cost us, but there's no assurance that we're serious about doing something. So what would you expect in the way of response? I mean, that,
Well,
I think there's an open question there.
And that's certainly, it's part of the exchange, but we've certainly had plans in this town. The North Farms Firehouse is an example. We put that out to bid. Numbers came in too high. We said, well, we're not going to do that. We're going to change the plan a little bit. We're going to put it out to bid again. But at least we were progressing. And that's how I would envision that we did it. We've got the plans. They're ready to go. Let's put them out to bid. This body can vote in the form of a resolution to do that. We have all that stuff ready to go. We could make another motion that follows that, a resolution that says we'd like to work on looking at rehabbing the current facility. That way you've got two things going on, but at least we've got progress. My concern is, I mean, I'm in support, but I'm not in support of continued frustration. So well, let's deal with them separately. If we pass a resolution tonight that asks the administration to re-put out the prior plans for a bid, is it going to happen?
The way the motion stands now, it involves both. You're saying,
I'll change it.
just please let me finish. Why? So you're saying that it will just be put out the same design that was put out before?
That would be my intent of...
Without doing anything else?
That would be the first part, yes.
Well, if it's a first part, see, I've got to talk to purchasing.
I'll answer the question, yes. And then there will more than likely, in all candor, be a subsequent motion that maybe does something additional. They're not intertwined.
Yes, they are intertwined.
Okay.
Just the minutes from this meeting will clearly show that they're intertwined. What it illustrates is we're not really sure what we want to do. I'm going to have to talk to purchasing about how the purchasing office deals with the questions that may come in from any potential bidder regarding that conundrum of what the town really is interested in.
Right, so I'm going to move. I'm being flagged down.
Give me a minute.
Me too.
Well, so let me conclude and pass it off. So, walking into this meeting, thinking about the agenda item, remembering April 12th, because I voted years ago along with the mayor, to support the administration in his veto of the pool project. I readily admit that. But when I saw the way this whole thing was going down, I supported the resolution on April 12th. And here we sit over a year later, and nothing's happened. So walking in the meeting today, I was like, well, Councilor Testa, with all due respect, this is my thought process, so please don't, there's going to be an election in a few months, he wants to say he did these things. This is totally a political move, and, here we are, right? But what I'm faced with is obstruction of progress. Because even if we say, let's do this, and it doesn't happen, all it does is it hampers the next council from being able to do something. I see no legitimate reason not to do this. I'll leave it at that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, the conundrum here is, what do we want to do? And we haven't arrived at a conclusion, apparently. We're not sure whether we want to retrofit the existing or put out another bid regarding the earlier design, or even come up with a whole new design. I mean, that's the core of this. And I don't think it's just trying to obstruct project. Progress, it's usually that we know what we want to do, we put it out and request bids. But now we're trying to let someone else make a decision about what it should be by putting out potentially multiple bids. I haven't seen the like in my time in office. I would have to talk to purchasing.
Councilor Zandri.
Yeah, I'm just going to make this quick. You know, Mayor, we asked for, during the ARPA process, we asked for this to go out to bid. It was actually a wrestling match between the council and the administration about starting the process because we wanted to get some action on the pool. And we've already passed one resolution on this, and quite frankly, we've had motions that were voted on up here that were changed after the fact. The uptown parking, when we talked about Wood and Kaplan and Simpson Court and how that project could not be broken up, absolutely could not be broken up, it absolutely was broken up. That parking got finished at Simpson Court, and it took more than a year to get across the street. We originally wanted to change that. We were told no. So the original vote from last year was to put out the bid, which actually, you still haven't taken any action on that. None. And we're here tonight
For
again.
exactly the same reason as I'm expressing now. There was not agreement on the council as to exactly what was supposed to be bid. And we're dealing with that same issue now.
That's fine, because I think I've already heard up here, and I'm gonna defer to Councilor Testa. We'll split the things up. All we're looking to do is to advance this thing forward. And so I'm done with my comments, and I'll defer, because it looks like Councilor Testa wants to talk about it too.
Councilor Testa.
Thank you. First of all, in all honesty, it has nothing to do with the election. I don't need this. If I get reelected, it's because of what I've done for 18 years, or I don't get reelected. I'm not doing this tonight as a political move because there's an election coming, and I want to tell everybody, oh, look at me. I'm still trying to get the pool done. I'm doing this because it's August, the election's in November, and we have work to do. I'm just here doing my job. And I'm sick and tired of this pool just sitting around not getting work done. And I will say this, when I put this together, I added a little provision because we've talked over the months, years, that maybe the project was too aggressive. Maybe it was too much. And then the more time went on, everybody was tossing their hat in saying, well, then let's just put in a splash pad. Or let's just do this. Let's do something. People were just losing patience and saying, let's get something done. So in anticipation that when a bid came in and the number may be a certain, whatever that number is, some people may say, that's a little too aggressive. We need to scale back a little bit. I thought, well, let's just ask the bidders to make every individual component an alternative item that could be pulled out or not. That was an afterthought as I was typing up my motion. I did not mean to complicate things, and I did not mean to require a new bid spec. So if asking the bidders to itemize all of the everything in the bid in such a way that they could be pulled out is too much, I'll revise my motion. Because that sentence just basically, with all due respect, Mr. Mayor, that sentence gave you the ability to find a way out of this. I will say this, and Mr. Zandri brought up the point that we should not forget. When we were talking about in the beginning of the ARPA process, the administrations felt very strongly that the applications had to get out to the businesses and the nonprofits. We couldn't talk about anything else until that happened. And we were at a meeting
And we directly asked you if we put the applications out the way they're written up, will you rebid the pool project? And you said yes. You said yes. We took that as a deal. We made a deal. And sir, again, with respect, you reneged on that deal. Here we are a year later, and you did not put the project out to bid. Now, if you want to start saying it's because we've added complicating factors, you can say that all night long. But I'm not going to buy it. And I'm really frustrated. That's why I'm bringing it up again, Councilor Fishbein. And that's why I talk about it constantly on social media. I talk about it all the time. I don't have a whole lot of things I feel real strongly about, other than the running of this town, doing my job as I've done for years, monitoring the budget, working well with my colleagues. I know that we have to do a lot with the infrastructure, and there's a whole lot going on with that. But there's that damn pool that we should have done 4 years ago, and we didn't do it. Why didn't we do it? Because it was vetoed over the money. So we've talked about it since then. Everybody still implied that they still wanted it. So I'm saying again, as I've said in the past, I'll take a breath and tone it down a little. I want it rebid. And if it comes in at $12 million, we can then look at it and say, okay, where are we, folks? Can we do this? Can we not? If it comes in at 6, 8, 9, whatever, we need to know what it's going to cost. And then we can start talking about making alterations, maybe getting in a revised bid. But if we don't put it out to bid again, mark my words, nothing will ever get done. Nothing will get what? As is. Nothing will get done. I promise you that. And as Mr. Reynolds said in his frustration, might as well just fill it in. So I don't feel that this is a dead issue. I still feel strongly that that is an incredible community resource, that we had put together a project design that was amazing and would have provided so many recreational opportunities, from pool, splash pad, amphitheater, picnicking, all different wonderful things. And I still feel strongly that I want that project done. If we decide to scale it down and make concessions because of the cost, that's okay. I'll fight that, but let's have that fight. But I'm not willing to make those concessions before we even put the project out to bid again. So I am going to amend my motion to remove all the words after specifications.
So why don't you withdraw the first motion and then just make that
I will withdraw my motion and make a new motion. I move that the town council approve a resolution formally requesting that the administration immediately order and authorize the rebidding of the community pool renovation project utilizing the previous bid specifications.
Second. Moved and seconded, and just for clarity's sake, Councilor Carmody, you remove your second to the original motion. Okay. I had Councilor Tada on the list next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The reason for on April 12th, 2022, so I had amended your motion to add the also bid or issue an RFP to seek the cost of the renovations of the current pool. To go back to that, I don't want to rehash that whole meeting again. The reason for that, and it sounds like that's why the mayor's saying it never went out to bid. So if so, I mean, if that's what's holding it back, then I guess we remove that as your current motion does. I'm not happy about that, and the reason I fought so hard for that is because I don't think we ever got a definitive answer as to whether the current pool can be fixed or renovated in some way. I hate that only the government demolishes real estate and builds things new, because the private sector or private residents would never do that. And you see government doing it all the time. You know, if you have an issue at your house, you don't knock down your house and build a new house, you fix it. But when government's involved and when it's other people's money, we routinely knock down buildings or, you know, just completely demolish something and build a new one. So I hate to do that with taxpayer dollars if I don't know that we can't salvage what we already have. And I don't know that at this point. Now, it's been sitting there for so many years, it's probably at a point where we can't, but could we have done that? Could we have salvaged it maybe 3 years ago? Maybe, and maybe we still can. So it's not, Mr. Mayor, two competing bids. All it is we're asking for an RFP to have somebody that has pool construction knowledge to come in and say, and take a look. So just like any RFP, you set a date, they come out, any interested construction companies come out, they take a look, they look at everything, and then they say, yes, we can fix this, we're gonna renovate the bathhouse, we need to put new pumps, we need to redo, you know, everything, and here's how much it's gonna cost. Or nobody responds, or they come out and they say, no, this is not salvageable, there's nothing you can do here, but at least then we know. At least now, if we bid the new project, we know that we couldn't have done it for any cheaper. And then if it comes in at an astronomical amount, then we make a decision. But at least we know that we didn't just demolish something that maybe could have been salvaged. That's the point of all that. But I don't understand why that's preventing us from doing them, as Councilor Fishbein stated, simultaneously, because it's probably the same people that would bid on both. So if you do the RFP and they come out and they give us, you know, figures for that, and maybe they also bid on the new project, but we can compare. So I just don't understand why that can't happen simultaneously. So again, I mean, if that part of it has to disappear for us to put this out to bid, I mean, I guess it does, but I would have a very hard time supporting the new pool if I don't know that we couldn't do it for cheaper. As far as the splash pads, I know that came up earlier. One of the first things I mentioned with ARPA was a splash pad, and the reason for that, and it doesn't necessarily need to be where community pool is. We have other areas in town, I think I've talked about them before, that I think would be great for it. The splash pad, aside from the pool, it's a lot of bang for your buck. It's a low dollar amount. I think when the original pool bids came, like the biggest best one was $500,000, which was in the bids. And then you can do a pretty decent one for, at the time, was I think $250,000. We can do those now, and it doesn't have to have anything to do with community pool. We can do them, there's various parks in town where they would work, they have ample parking. So that's something I think we should still keep in mind, you know, even when we're discussing the ARPA money that we can do. I think it's a big, community would like it, and it's not a lot of money. So just a side note on and I heard that Cheshire just got a steep grant for one, very recently. I'd have to double check on that, but I did hear that. So there are grants out there for that. But anyway, that's the justification for the reason why that April 12th vote appeared the way that it did. So I don't know that we want to keep that in the same motion, but I would like it to, just so we know once and for all, can we salvage this or not? Thank you.
So I've been quiet. And honestly, I walked in here thinking, if we asked the administration to do this once before and it didn't get done, what's the point of asking them again? Mr. Reynolds, I have to give you some credit. Thinking about the project in parts. And I do recall that the prior bid specs had separated out the splash pad. So the benefit of going forward with the current motion is that we could end up with a price that splits out the splash pad. So I do see a benefit there from that perspective. Councilor Fishbein.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. you know, this has been going on for a long time, 4 years now. And the whole project really got derailed a while ago because, you know, Councilor Testa brought up before about being able to look at portions of this. Councilor Testa, you may recall that when we talked about this at the very beginning, about 4 years ago, I said, I want to see the numbers a la carte so that we could do exactly what you're talking about. But someone met with the committee and said, no, you're not going to do it that way. We were given a package at the end. And I said, where's the a la carte? Because one of my concerns, you may recall, was the outdoor gym equipment for senior citizens. We don't have that anywhere here in town. They didn't do that. This is what we put together. This is the number. Take it or leave it. That's what we were left with. As I said before, this whole thing has been screwed up for a very long time now. I am in support of the motion. I just hope that we don't have to wait till January to get there. That would be unfortunate. So, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Councilor Laffin.
Thank you. If it helps Councilor Tata feel any better, that the town rehabbed the pool a couple times over its entire existence to a very similar, reiteration of it, a variant of it each time. And everyone I asked, or we asked in public, Park and Rec, Public Works, when we were down for the tour, the consensus was that the pool was done, that it was dead. Countless stories of each year they go to turn it on and they worry it's not going to work, and then what they thought was a catastrophic failure in its final year only allowed the pool to continue working because the repair that was needed, they knew what kind of failure it was, the repair that it was needed actually turned out to be located just outside in the small little area of where, if it had been past that line, that would have been it. It would have been tear up the whole pool to fix. So I think I'm comfortable saying that the style of the pool that's there now, all of the variants that were before it, I'm comfortable saying that we have exhausted that, and it's time to move on to a new variant, to a new evolution of what the pool should be. That's it, thanks.
Councilor Zandri.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wanted to chime in on that existing pool element as well. I understand where Councilor Todd is coming from, and she's not wrong in that it only seems like government will go in and tear something down. But like Councilor Laffin pointed out, there's multiple problems with the current design of the existing pool and the amount of time that's gone by with nothing happening in there, no maintenance, no upkeep. The things that are growing out of the basin of that pool, it's probably unrepairable. One of the elements that I remember from different conversations with the pool committee was, and with Parks and Rec, was anytime that there was an issue within the pool, a biological, bloody nose or something like that, they basically have to pull through the filtration system the entire gallonage of the pool. That's a health requirement now, which didn't exist in the 80s when they had that type of design, 70s and 80s, when that pool was designed the way that it's designed today. Basically, if something happens at noon, that pool's closed the rest of that day. With some of these design changes that we saw, there was a smaller area, a smaller swim area, and with the splash pad being built where it was outlined, it was separating the other body of water that was being talked about as well. So that would always be one body of water. It was a smaller body of water, plus it would go through the filtration system faster. If there was a biological problem, they might be able to get the pool back open a little bit faster. When we voted this through during ARPA, one of the comments that I made is that there was never going to be a better time to do the pool right there than that year. We had companies that were looking for work. They were starved for work. we had very low prices on everything at the time. And it was a season that we couldn't use the pool anyway. Because of the pandemic, nobody could swim anyhow. We wouldn't even be impacting a swim season. It would have been down already. And I remember the discussion, and I remember when it got vetoed. We passed it, it got vetoed. And I remember the comment that I made during the veto discussion about pushing it down the road for another day. Never in the history of anything ever has anything been cheaper when it comes to government. And we waited, and this is where we are today. And there is a little bit of money already set aside for this. There's $1 million that's been shoved around from budget monies that we maneuvered in prior years. They don't have a total on ARPA, and I understand that because it's fluid, but there was $5 million that was set aside. It got cannibalized through a number of different efforts. Some of it was the budget. It was the mayor's budget, some of what we did up here. Some of it was us expanding the ceiling on the nonprofits and the businesses. But there was money left over. The last number that I had was about $1.3 million was left. Now, I don't know how much of that has been shuttled around since then. And I also know that there are applications that did not get passed. So I still think it's pretty safe to say about 1 million to 1.3 of ARPA still is in existence there to utilize. So that puts us between, we'll call it 2 million flat as a base kickoff to start this. It's not going to be any cheaper next year. We really should take a look at this as soon as we can and get these bids out. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Councilor Tata.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess I'm still just going back to why I don't understand why we wouldn't want to know 100% for sure if this can be done cheaper before we go to the more expensive option. I'm struggling, having a hard time with ever being able to support the bigger project, the expensive one, if I'm not sure we could have salvaged something. And I know everybody says, well, we were close, and that year it almost failed, but it didn't because we were able to fix it. But maybe we can fix it. I don't think we have a definitive answer on that yet. And so, for me, I don't know. I think I'd have a really difficult time supporting the full project without knowing first. Now, maybe, if we do the RFP and nobody responds, nobody replies, or if maybe one of the pool companies comes in and says, there's nothing you can do here, or they respond and say, hey, it's going to cost almost as much as the rebuild would cost. But at least we have the info. We don't have that info right now. And that was the reason why that was tacked onto the motion on April 12th. So again, I'm not opposed to this motion, but I'm struggling with the fact that we're being forced to remove that part, because if we don't remove that part, nothing's going to happen. That's what I have a problem with. My problem doesn't lie with the council. My problem lies with the fact that the administration is saying that's why it's not going out to bid. And I don't see why that prohibits it from going out to bid. So I'm just struggling with the decision of, do I drop that and move on, or just to force the bidding? That's just kind of what I'm trying to decide. Thank you.
Councilor Lavin.
I think for me, there's a financial cost to investigating that it would not pay off, because I'm very confident. I'm also not that interested in repairing it in its current state for all the operational issues that either Councilor Sandry brought up or that we've talked about over the years. It's inefficient. What was it? It's the second largest zero entry pool in the world or something like that, in the country. I don't know, whatever it was, in North America. That's just a style. I mean, it started that way because it was literally like a swimming hole, and they were like, oh, 1 year, let's just pave it over. I don't know, drop cement in it. And that's how it ended up like that. So I don't think that the financial cost or time or resources to investigate that will pay off. And in addition to the mayor apparently agrees. But I think in order to just keep this moving, this is the way to go. I supported the repair investigation or consideration last time because, as I stated, I was very into it being as unanimous as possible and having everybody on the same page. That unfortunately just I think that time has passed, and I don't think that's a viable option enough. So I apologize that I no longer support the repair option.
Councillor Allenson.
From what I remember, when I watched the meetings around when the pool was put out to bid in the first place, I do believe that the reason that it was put out to bid in this state with like splash pad and all of these kind of modified buildings and maybe some modified access from a parking perspective was actually to make it more usable for a longer period of time. And from what I remember, it was put out to bid because in this state, because it would make the whole park more fit to modern standards. So I know from my perspective, of course, I don't have kids, and I'm definitely not a child anymore, and I don't like cold water, but kids love being ankle deep in cold water, maybe not necessarily submerging themselves all the way through October. Historically, we've always closed our pool kind of before Labor Day. So if we're getting like 2.5 months worth of timing out of the pool as it is, I would love to see a modern iteration of that. And I do believe that that's why the pool was put out to bid the way that it was back when it was put out to bid. I remember there being a lot of conversation around the repairing of the pool at the time, and even before it was closed for a few years. The repairing of the pool was seen to be non-feasible. And, personally, I'd rather see something that could be used for a longer period of time, something that remains fenced off, and maybe we can continue to keep the community pool park open for a longer period of time, if not year-round, with some other attraction there, as opposed to only using it for 3 to 4 months of the year. So I would love to put it out to bid as Councilor Testa has proposed, as it was put out to bid before. I think that has always been our goal. That was our goal in the last resolution as well. So I don't really know that much has changed from that perspective. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Carmody.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't know what more can be said about this pool. We've been talking about it for years, longer than I've been on this council. And I appreciate Councilor Testa keeping this dream alive, but it's become a nightmare. I support your motion because it's the wishes of the community to see this revitalized. It's been the wishes of this council to see this revitalized. And that's fallen on deaf ears and ignored. And the reality is that most likely nothing is going to be done until January. But let's stand up and say, that this council is with the people and that we want to see this pool renovated. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Councillor Tata.
Thank you. The issue of the cost of having an RFP, I don't see what the big cost is to doing that. We're not issuing bid specs. It's an RFP. So they're going to come to us and give us proposals. So I don't think there's a big cost associated with that. But I think the bigger issue now is that the April 12th, 2022 vote, we all agreed. 8 of us were present, and it was unanimous. And now we're negotiating against ourselves and what we already decided to try to get something done that isn't what we agreed on because we have no other option. And as Councilor Testa said, it was said during ARPA that this was what we were going to do. So we had 2 times where everyone agreed this was what was going to happen. And it was none of us who decided this wasn't going to happen, but now we're here negotiating against our own motion and our own resolution to try to make something happen, which wasn't ideally what we wanted. I mean, I guess I would want to know before I support tonight's motion, because it's not ideal for me, but the April 12th one was ideal, and I think we all agreed. But I think I need to know if Councilor Testa's motion passes as it stands now, is this going to go out to bid or not? Because if it's not, then I'm not supporting it. I'm going to remain in support of the original motion. But if it is, I need to decide how I want to vote. So Mr. Mayor, if Councilor Testa's motion passes, will the pool be going out to bid?
If the motion passes as it's now written, the only question I have, I would be supportive of putting it out to bid. I need to ask, however, there was a mention that the specifications be broken up to allow a la carte segments. That is not expected. Okay. Then, because I don't know that we'd be able to do that, I have to talk to purchasing. If we're not changing anything with the specifications that were put out the last time, then unless I hear something from purchasing that's a problem, as far as I'm concerned, it can go out.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right. I think that's it. So, Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Allenson?
Yes, please.
Carmody?
Yes.
Fishbein?
Yes.
Lappin?
Yes.
Tata?
Yes.
Testa?
Yes.
Zandri?
Yes.
Cervoni?
Yes. Motion passes. There being no further business on the agenda, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Hearing no opposition, I adjourn.